RWBY.
Mispronouncing RWBY the entire video. For some reason this is a running gag, but it falls flat when you consider running gags are supposed to be funny, and this video has about as much comedy as a CinemaSins video, which is none.
Team RWBY is a group of 4 girls learning how to be huntresses. RWBY is the leader of Team RWBY, which isn't confusing at all.
Differentiating between Ruby Rose the character and Team RWBY itself is really not confusing, even with the show itself doing a joke about it. This is especially the case over text, which is how most of the fans of the show communicate with one another given this is the age of the internet.
She's also got a dead mom, who was added to the series at the last possible second on a whim because RWBY's writing likes to fly by the seat of its oversized clown pants.
Is the implication here that RWBY adding in things last second is bad writing or something? Because no, it's not. The Maidens were a last second addition of Volume 3, and have been a fascinating and important plot point since then. Neo initially being added in Volume 2 and then re-added in Volume 6 were both also last-minute decisions which have turned out for the better. Neo's a very popular character and has a really good story that came of this. You even mention later on in the video that Neo is your favorite character. Similarly, Summer Rose being dead has resulted in a compelling story. So, point moot, I suppose.
Bland is secretly an alley cat, which is fitting because she belongs in the garbage.
Trashing on Blake Belladonna, proving Blaber's lack of good taste in characters.
Because they don't know how many ears they're supposed to have. Do they get human ears? Animal ears? Neither? Both? Why do only some of them have tails? That's not fair.
Not understanding how faunus work when there is an entire video describing that faunus each have one trait of whatever animal said trait pulls from. This leads into another consistent issue of this video, which is intentionally leaving out context in order for Blaber's supposed jokes to land. Once again, another similar issue with CinemaSins videos. Though, I suppose he would want to leave that out, since for some reason he has a problem with additional side content existing, so World of Remnant's only mention is catching a stray for literally no reason.
Their exciting adventures at Beacon Academy, except don't, as the show introduces a million side characters, explores none of them, and then the school blows up. But the show isn't about the characters. Boy, is it not about the characters.
Saying the show isn't about the characters when the characters the show actually focus on, which you seem to ignore in favor of criticizing side characters not getting attention, which doesn't make sense anyway because they are, as you said, side characters, have some of the most well-thought-out character arcs in media with very subtle details and intricate aspects to them, are proof that this is just an outright falsehood. I can almost guarantee you would take an issue with the show focusing too much on side characters if it did that instead of focusing on its main characters, since, you know, writing doesn't work that way. But since you're complaining about a focus on main characters instead of side characters, I'm assuming you're complaining just to complain. So there's no winning with you, you're just being miserable on purpose. Also, I know the video came out before the book did, but it's just funny to me that in the very same month that this video was released, RWBY After the Fall was released, which focused on, guess who, side characters. Followed up the next year by Before the Dawn, which was, you guessed it, more side characters. It wouldn't be fair to use this as an actual slight against this video, since, again, the books were after the fact. It's just very funny to me how that worked out.
It's about the over-the-top spectacle fighting, and the fights speak for themselves. Or rather, they would if they weren't constantly accompanied by non-stop butt metal.
Complaining about RWBY's fights and music as if both aren't two of the best aspects of the show.
Outside of the fights, the animation is pretty shaky-mistakey. The models do so much clipping and clapping that one could reasonably mistake them for a horse, and the lip flap mocap looks like it was done by a bass on a wall.
Over-exaggerated criticisms of the animation, which is a result of the initial low budget, as you yourself stated in the very beginning of the video.
Despite its initial budget of $7.
This video came out in 2019, 3 years after the massive jump in quality between 3 and 4, and each volume still improving from there.
But remember, semblances aren't magic. You can also augment your powers with dust, a special powder that allows you to use magic. But that's not magic either. Oh my goodness, magic does exist? Well wait, what makes magic different from a semblance or dust? Well, that's a good question. They forgot that too.
The implication here is that Remnant's magic system is confusing when it isn't. Volume 6 has already come and gone by this point, and I know you know this because you show Salem's origin story later in the video. So we already know humanity used to have magic, and once it was destroyed and came back, they only had a semblance of that power left. That's why it's called a semblance. Again, intentionally being dumb for the sake of a joke that falls flat because it isn't true, or for the sake of painting the story in a bad light, which also falls flat because, again, it's untrue.
The villains spent 2 entire volumes stealing dust before the writers forget about that and never bring it up again. I'd say they magically forgot, except that couldn't be it, because magic doesn't exist.
This is also just a blatant falsehood. The dust being stolen by Roman is, for one thing, halted at the beginning of Volume 2, so he only spent the first volume doing it, not both of the first 2. For another, that dust is used to blow up the tunnel of the train heading from Mountain Glen to Vale to let Grimm invade the streets. Not to mention, it's a partial red herring for the authorities to be focused on the dust robberies more than any other criminal happenings. The writers didn't forget about it, you just didn't pay attention.
Maybe the answer lies in World of Remnant, the RWBY Rotten side series that answers some of the many, many questions the show thinks it doesn't have time for. Because the best way to do your world building is to ignore it the first time around and then give your viewers homework.
Implying that side content is inherently bad or something.
There's also RWBY Chippy, which is a series of dumb gags that somehow uses the cast better than the actual show does.
Once again, proving Blaber's lack of good taste. Chibi is good, but acting like the exaggerated caricatures of their most basic Volume 1 counterparts is a better usage of them than actual character arcs and developments is stupid, and I'm not afraid to say that so frankly. Because it is indeed stupid.
Spend 40 episodes impatiently waiting for the plot to start until Team RWBY joins up with Ozpin.
Implying the story isn't going anywhere when it actually is, and you would know that if you actually watched the show with any amount of attention, but as we've established, you clearly are watching the show with your eyes closed and your ears plugged.
The best way to watch Roombas is to think of the first 3 volumes as one long season, and then have a friend tell you what happens in 4 and 5 so you don't have to watch them because they're garbage.
Anyone who actually thinks Volume 1 is better than any volume that came after literally just does not have taste in media. Not liking where the series took its story is one thing, but to act like Volume 1 has any amount of better storytelling than the objectively more story-based Volume 4 is going to result in you getting laughed at. Trust me, I used to be this way, then upon rewatching, I realized I was stupid and wrong.
Writers desperately want you to think that Ozpin is as morally gray as his hair, but they also keep forgetting to have him actually do anything evil.
Once again, omitting the entirety of the Lost Fable in order to make a point, which means you didn't actually have a point in the first place. It's not even just the Lost Fable, you're outright omitting Ozpin's entire story and characterization. His return to Remnant wasn't initially some noble thing he was doing to help save humanity. It was because he wanted to see Salem again. He was being selfish. Then, when the academies are established, he goes on, 80 years worth of students starting at age 17 to be trained to fight in his war unknowingly. This is the entire reason Hazel has a grudge against him, which you would know if you paid attention to Volume 5 instead of acting like a poser RWBY purist. The few people he does let into the reality of the situation are still left in the dark about insanely important things, especially the fact he has been told that Salem supposedly can't be killed.
Don't get it, that sounds exclusively beneficial.
No, RWBY, you don't understand. I can turn into a bird, RWBY. I can turn into a bird!
Uncle Crow, I don't, why is this bad?
What do you do with a drunken sailor early in the morning?
This whole bit is, once again, you guessed it, blatant misinformation. Crow didn't have anything to do with posing this as a bad thing. That was entirely Raven's doing. And no, being able to turn into a bird isn't a bad thing, of course not. The only reason Yang takes issue with it is because Raven worded it as if Ozpin did it to them without consent. Raven's entire conversation with Yang and Weiss was the intent of making Yang question everything. Raven wanted Yang to question why Ozpin would do that, but because Yang chose to leave, this didn't get to happen the way Raven wanted it to, and Yang confronted Ozpin about it with the idea that it was forced upon them before learning the full context. Great job missing the point, you're very good at that, as this entire video proves. You have the media literacy of a geriatric snail. I'd figure with as much experience as you have manipulating the narrative to your own view, you'd have enough insight to see one of the characters doing it. But I guess that would be giving you too much credit.
RWBY's real problem is that they throw in every cool idea they have and then don't develop anything. Why advance the plot or talk to people? That's dumb! My favorite character is the only one who doesn't talk, but I'm excited to see how they ruin her. Sometimes not talking is the best way to advance a character.
Objectively incorrect. You not liking what the story does with itself or its concepts does not equate to the story doing nothing with them by any stretch of the imagination.
Like Yang and Bland, who not talked their way into being girlfriends because the fanbase was so insistent about it that the writers just gave up, I guess.
Also objectively incorrect, Mr. Blake has more chemistry with a dog. I'm sure you're a very reputable source on whether the ship was good or pandering. But it is very funny you somehow landed a voice role in the show at all, but especially funny that it was the very volume that these two solidified their relationship. Next question.
I can't wait for Volume 7.
Subtly trying to spoil Penny's return because you're salty you didn't get the initial voice acting role. And that was probably the entire reason that you made this garbage video. Funny then that you consider the show garbage. Pot kettle, anyone?
Equally well-earned moment when Weiss finally gets to hook up with Torchwick's ghost.
That's pedophilia.
Oh hey there, I'm John Roosterteeth, here to insist that you please watch any of our other shows besides RWBY.
Implying anyone watched Genlock. Or Nomad for that matter. Like it or not, RWBY keeps the lights on Rooster Teeth. Speaking of RWBY and lights, hashtag Greenlight Volume 10.
They got all the Rooster Teeth hits, like Camp Camp, Genlock, Red vs. Blue, and RWBY Chibi, which is somehow better than actual RWBY.
If you're so insistent RWBY is garbage, why did you even go about trying to voice for the show a second time? Even better question is, why did they even let you in? I'm all for companies letting people who criticize them still work for them because I think that provides a much healthier work environment, but this video is filled with things that are just outright false or misconstrued so out of context so that you'd sound like you had a real joke or critique to make. I know there's gonna be a lot of people going oh, but this is just a comedy video. But that's still a problem. If the video is trying to be comedic, then it failed at that very concept by writing jokes that only work if you ignore things about the show that makes the jokes become pointless. If the video was actually trying to criticize RWBY, then it failed at that for the exact same reason. Giving these points the way that you did isn't criticism or comedy. It's bad faith commentary intentionally paints the show in a negative light just because of your own dislike of it and being salty about not getting initially hired. Again, I'm still absolutely baffled they let your bad faith self into the show later on anyway. And if it was just a harmless funny video, it's not. People think that these incorrect points are true, and also these unfunny jokes somehow have comedy, which also isn't true. Then it would have ended with, do actually watch RWBY, instead of, watch literally anything else, or Chibi's caricatures are better because I have no taste. And, like I said, it's perfectly fine to not like how RWBY's story progressed. The issue is, if you stop liking RWBY, but keep watching the show and then continue complaining, just go watch something else in that case. And then it gets worse when you have things like this video, where people say things that are just outright incorrect and act like it's the show's fault that they have the wrong idea. The show didn't do its storytelling wrong, you just didn't pay attention.
If I bleed tonight, I am set